So at around 12:30 this morning, the Seminole County Sheriff's Office received an emergency call at the location behind us that a stabbing had occurred. From 12:30 this morning, we've been conducting a murder investigation into the stabbing death of Kristen Stevens, 40-year-old female, obviously, who lived at the location. The initial report came in as somebody who was at the location fled to a neighboring home, called 911. Again, that was about 12:45 the call came in. Deputies responded nearly 4 minutes later at the location. Responded at the location, immediately came in contact with a male who was later identified as a 16-year-old male who is an occupant of the home, the son of the victim, and not involved in the crime. A report was given that another male suspect who has not been publicly identified yet was stabbed in the leg, went to a neighbor's home, report what had happened. His report is that around 12:30 in the morning, a hammer or a breaking of a glass in the master bedroom. There's two French doors. The French doors are made of glass. There was a smashing of the window. There was a hammer located on the inside of the residence, and he awoke in the bed with the victim to another male on top of her, stabbing her what appeared to be a knife. He attempted to kick the perpetrator off. While he was kicking the perpetrator off, was stabbed in the upper portion of the leg one time, realized that he was not prepared to address it, fled out that same door that was the point of entry of the crime. Ran to the neighbor's house, called 911. Deputies arrived, cleared the house, immediately came in contact with the 16-year-old, identified that he was not involved, and as they searched the house, they found Kristen Stevens on the floor of the bedroom, deceased, appeared to be stabbed multiple times, up to, it was a horrific scene, probably up to 20, 30, up to 70 times, stabbed what appeared to be a kitchen knife that was located next to her body at the location. It did not take long to find out that the perpetrator was her estranged boyfriend of a long time, one that she had a child in common. The 16-year-old is the biological son of both the victim of the crime here, the female victim, as well as the perpetrator of the crime that was at the location. Their history has been a long history over about an 18-year period of domestic violence and injunctions dating back to 2014, where in Orange County, Kristen had filed for an injunction alleging a strangulation, other types of domestic-related incidents. That went to court there. There was an injunction filed in Orange County. There were, again, in 2022, was a domestic violence call that occurred when they were traveling back from a boating incident at the coast. Deputies responded to the location and ultimately made an arrest on Kristen as the perpetrator after she had scratched the face of the estranged boyfriend, James Lindsay. James is a 42-year-old. Our victim, Kristen, is a 40-year-old. She was then the suspect in that crime. More recently, on November 6th, the early morning hours of November 6th, she was again a victim of a battery here, where deputies responded after allegations that he climbed on top of her as they were living here together. Ultimately, an altercation ensued. She had a bruise to her face, had a bruise to her leg, and ultimately he was arrested for domestic violence at the time. A temporary injunction was issued for her protection. Ultimately, a final injunction was issued on November 20th, and a part of that injunction was he was to surrender 21 firearms and all ammunition that he had in his possession, which he complied with. Deputies who made the arrest petitioned, as we typically do in domestic violence cases, to have an increased bond amount as well as electronic monitoring placed upon the suspect at the time. That went to the court. The judge that proceeded over the case made the decision not to impose electronic monitoring. So the suspect at this time did not wear an ankle bracelet to track his whereabouts, and then ultimately was given a $1,000 bond, later bonded out. Ultimately, there were 2 other reports that came into the sheriff's office, not domestic related, more so with Kristen making allegations of financial involvement, that James was getting into a bank account or trying to get into a bank account on a business that she was operating. What we know what happened with James is, as deputies were arriving and as the second victim, who has not been identified because of martial law, fled from the area, he also fled in his vehicle, a black Chrysler 300. He left the area, went out of this neighborhood before deputies arrived, ultimately got on Fort Christmas Road, and it looks like lost control of his vehicle in excess of 100 miles per hour, just miles away from here in Orange County. A case in the early morning hours that many of you had reported on, that the Florida Highway Patrol was investigating, that it was a single vehicle fatality where the driver was ejected from the vehicle. That driver was indeed James, that was leaving and fleeing the scene from right here. So what we have is, again, to recap all the involvement we have, a tragic homicide. Kristen Stevens, 40-year-old woman that's inside the house. The perpetrator is also deceased. As he fled here, he was ejected from his vehicle. As that vehicle turned just miles away, he was thrown from that scene. That crash was identified 4 hours after the report here, largely because there was nothing visible on the roadway. It would be hard to even see the vehicle. It's just a dark area. If you go down Fort Christmas Road into Orange County, there's a pretty aggressive and significant bend where that is. It's likely he was fleeing in excess of 100 miles an hour, was not anticipating that bend, took the vehicle off the road and was ejected from that vehicle. He was located at that scene. A 16-year-old boy that was not involved, who was sleeping, it was here, was inside the house. I mentioned that the most recent domestic report occurred on November 6th. That's when he was arrested. That's when a temporary injunction was submitted. What we know about the other unidentified victim right now, who had the 1 stab wound in his leg, he is being hospitalized right now. He is likely to make a full recovery. He has not been identified because of Marcy's Law. She recently met him through an online dating app. They had built a relationship over the past couple of weeks. They were together last night, and then ultimately, after leaving the gym, potentially having dinner or something like that, he returned back here. The son, 16-year-old son, was already asleep by the time they got back here. We're thinking that they got back around 10 o'clock or a little bit after 10 o'clock, a couple of hours before the estranged boyfriend broke in through the glass window in the back, again, smashing the window, what looks like a hammer, immediately coming in, jumping on top of her, on top of the bed, stabbing her numerous times. When the other victim saw that, tried to kick the perpetrator off, was stabbed in the leg. He fled out that back door, went to a neighbor's house, called 911. Deputies arrived 4 minutes later. We're on scene, we assess, and we've been out here ever since doing forensic examination. Our team is still here. Again, no threat to the community, connecting the dots on all these circumstances and situations. Part of that is getting those reports from Orange County, making sure that we can identify, connect the 2 scenes now together, and that's where we're at. An incredibly tragic, frightening event for everyone that's involved.
Sheriff, there's a lot to unpack there, so I want to make sure that I'm understanding. So Mr. Lindsay and Ms. Stevens had a lengthy relationship. Is the son from that union?
Yes, the son is from that union. That's the biological son. It's an 18-year relationship, never married, but they lived as if they were a family.
And the guy who was here last night is relatively new in her life within the last couple of weeks. And I guess the assertion from the sheriff's office is this estranged boyfriend didn't like it and was intending to do something very violent to end it.
That's exactly the report. It looks like she was in a new relationship. The estranged boyfriend did not like that. He was probably conducting some type of monitoring or surveillance. There is previous reports that had been filed for an injunction that suggested that he was incredibly jealous, that he would work with his friends to monitor her whereabouts and behavior. And again, she was receiving services from our Invest team. That's that wraparound services between the Sheriff's Office, the State Attorney's Office, and our victim advocacy groups.
This time of year, unfortunately, we see so much domestic violence. We had a domestic violence incident in Titusville this morning where there's an officer-involved shooting and the suspect is dead. We had a doctor in Windermere yesterday arrested, allegedly killing his wife. Then we have this. This is that time of year. What was your advice to people who are in relationships where violence is unfortunately part of it?
Yeah, so the people that are in relationships, it is an incredibly dangerous and yet tricky situation to be in when it comes to victims of domestic violence. I can understand where many victims would feel alone and embarrassed and ashamed and worry about self-sufficiency when it comes to that. But there are absolutely resources and organizations that are available out there that can provide a safe haven and a shelter and resources to not only keep that female victim, and in many regards it is a female victim, but keep their family component together as well. So we want people to reach out and call. There's countless numbers of times where victims of domestic violence end up going back to the abuser. In this particular case, we know that it went back and forth. She was the perpetrator on at least one of the 3 incidents that we're aware of. But talking to people that knew her well, in spite of the only 3 reports, they had indicated, her family members had indicated that this was a long, domestic, challenging relationship. The best messages out there is there's people out there, not only criminal justice organizations, there's people that specialize in this that would be more than happy to give whatever resources and help to make sure that the victim is protected, and then we can provide some level of stability for the family.
This 16-year-old is now without a mother and a father. Your response to that?
Yeah, we have a 16-year-old boy who is incredibly brave and courageous, and our team is providing every bit of service that we can provide to him. He is not only a young man, he's a student, he's a person that has lost his mom and dad in one particular incident, and words can't express the grief that we have as a community, as an organization, and we want to do all that we can to make sure that we're providing the adequate services to support him, not only now, but into the future. And not just him. I mean, he's probably the most important part of this dilemma right now. I can't even imagine being a 16-year-old boy being awakened by deputy sheriffs that are responding to such a tragic and emergency call, and then receiving the tragic news today of what had happened. But there's other family members that are involved with that as well, and we're going to embrace and we're going to work with our professionals that support him and the entire family.
Speaking to neighbors here today, many didn't suspect that there was domestic violence happening at this home, even though a month ago we know that it happened here. What would you say? What recommendations do you have for neighbors to check in on their neighbors?
Yeah, I think when you come to neighborhoods, and this is a wonderful neighborhood, incredibly low crime rate. I mean, you know, people are connected to one another, but in many regards, we don't know what's happening in the home or behind the walls that are next to us. And I think that part of being neighborly is to be that voice and to check in, and of course, anytime you see something that may appear out of the ordinary or suspicious, it's incredibly important to report that. It did not happen in this particular case, but many domestic related situations that we have experienced in the past sometimes evolve out of the house where somebody is aggressively driving away, or some of those conversations are playing out in the front yard. And I think that this is another example of how tragic and how dangerous these domestic related incidents can be. So,
out of curiosity, the knife that was used, was it from here? Do you notice that a knife was missing? Or
yeah.
Did you bring it?
Well, we're still going through and forensically examining the entire home. I don't know if the knife was brought with him. There was a knife actually located on the outside of the double glass French doors, the point of entry. It does not appear that that knife was used in this particular crime. So there's no telling whether or not there was just a knife on the porch or he picked it up on the way coming in. That's something that once we get all the way through the house, we do a complete and full inventory. There's not a whole lot of eyewitnesses that were directly to the scene. Of course, the son was inside the house, but he was not in the bedroom at the time. So that's something we'll go through and find out where he got it. But it was a kitchen-like steak knife.
Sheriff,
was
was
there a
James
knife
Lindsay
laying next to
lived
her?
here until recently?
So James Lindsay lived here with Kristen. They lived here as a family until the November 6th domestic violence incident, where he was then court ordered to leave as a part of those conditions. He was court ordered to leave, a temporary injunction was given, a permanent injunction was issued. That's when he turned in his 21 firearms and all ammunition, and it's likely that the tool used to commit this murder was a knife, because he did indeed surrender those weapons as a part of the court order.
Also, we've heard from neighbors that said that somebody ran towards that direction. That would have been the second victim that ran.
Well, the second victim ran to the home across the street. That was this home here. And it's likely that James parked his vehicle one road over, and we suspect he went and then maybe went from behind the house. So if there was somebody running, it very well may have been James running back to his vehicle to flee the area. But that's something that we'll do forensically as we work with the neighbors here to capture any video surveillance that we have. Just a horrible, horrible tragedy. And now this community has to rebuild, this family has to rebuild, and we have to provide very specific services to this 16-year-old boy. Any more questions?
Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, guys.
Sheriff.